All right. Today we're going to be talking about the unbearable lightness of being. This time it's a work of fiction rather than just a straight up philosophical text. But I think it's good to change things up every once in a while. And this is in the kind of philosophical literature genre anyway. This is going to be a little bit more difficult to talk about than our usual fare, I think. It's going to be difficult to choose where to start, how to start. Do you have any idea how you'd like to start? Because if not, I'll just like throw us right into the deep of it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really. Honestly, I think because this channel is the Tokyo Philosophical Society, I think we should probably jump more into the idea side of the novel. Yeah. I don't know if we'd be the greatest judges of prose or how he structured the novel, which I did enjoy, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I did enjoy the structuring of the novel. I enjoyed every moment of it. I read through it really quickly. I went through it twice. So it is quite an enjoyable novel, and I do recommend people read it. But I think today we're going to be sticking towards more of some of the ideas that he's thrown in here. And I guess it wouldn't be unfair to say this is a novel of ideas. Yeah. Or at least part of it is a novel of ideas. I mean, it really
definitely throws them around quite a bit.
It's a love story. It's a sophisticated love story, basically. Yeah. That's all I think the direction I want to take this today, and mainly three big parts of the book, which is it has to be eternal recurrence or eternal return, kitsch, and maybe about privacy. Yeah. But all these things kind of bleed together.
Yeah, they do.
So that was kind of where I wanted to take it today. I don't know if we're going to talk about prose, although the prose is wonderful at times. So.
Yeah. All right, should we just like head into those? Like I'm kind of glad those are the topics you picked out. I want to head straight there too. I don't want to spend too long getting into it. So let's start with a dangerous question then, and I'm sure this will lead us into these other topics. The dangerous question then will be, the title of the book is The Unbearable Lightness of Being. So what is the unbearable lightness of being?
Okay, so this kind of circles around everything, and it's the main theme of the book, but it's the idea that life is meaningless, essentially meaningless. But that is not... But you have to also recognize the unbearable lightness of being. So that he also gives it a negative aspect, right? In Parmenides, he's always saying Parmenides is saying that lightness is a good thing. And I think the title of the book, in essence, is saying life is kind of on an essential level meaningless, but that pains us, it hurts us. It's something that we can't deal with. So we're always pushing against the lightness, trying to make meaning in the world, and that's by creating heaviness in the world and meaning, and that's what kind of gets things messy.
Yeah. All right, I'm with you there. I just want to maybe kind of jump in on just a minor modification. I think that he also thinks that maybe it's human life that is meaningless. This is going to get into a theme he gets into later in the book about animals, but he says animals were not thrown out of paradise. So I'm pretty sure by that he means animals do not have this problem. Animals do not face the unbearable lightness of being. We do as humans. And it's going to largely, I don't know, he gives a lot of formulations of this, and he starts with the eternal return on this, but I'm hoping we can push this to some kind of idea of contingency. Human actions are somehow contingent, unnecessary, not necessary in some absolute way.
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess this is going to have to start in the part where I'm not on this firmest footing, because I get what he's saying. So this by the way has nothing to do with Nietzsche's statement of the eternal return, right? I don't know why Nietzsche is getting dragged into this, but
hey, do I?
He dragged him in, so that's his fault. The Nietzsche statement of the eternal return was simply a psychological test to see if you loved your life or not. Yeah. Right? I mean, it was a demon that snuck into your room at night and asked you a question like, well, what would you say to you if I told you that the universe just repeats and repeats and repeats again and again. And the demon says time is a flat circle, and it just keeps on going again and again. What would you do? Would you scream and gnash your teeth, or would you say you are a divine being? I love you. I mean, all this is a test to see if you're living your life for yourself, if you are enjoying your life, if you do find your life.
Yeah. Can you affirm your life?
Yeah.
Can you say yes to your life? And I mean, I think it's also supposed to kind of put things in perspective a little bit. Like, it's supposed to make you take a look at your life as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, and then and in that sense, like the bad things that do happen to you, which, I mean, you can't help, but bad things do happen to you, but can you somehow put these together in a larger whole? Can you make it like a musical composition and make the down notes part of the, you know, the prelude to the up notes, the upbeat part, right?
I mean, is it possible? Can you do this? Now, I think this is going to tie into what I think ultimately the book is saying, but immediately, at least, how about just in the beginning, we'll say this. He seems to take this in a way, a very different way. He says, like, well, you only have one life to live. Basically, YOLO. You only live once, and therefore, you don't know the best path or best course to choose, right? Yeah. Should you have done this or that? This is a thought that haunts people all the time, right? Should I have done this in the past? Would my life have turned out better if I had done this, or I had married her, or I had dumped her, or
even going into the future, right? Like, what should I do from now on? Should I leave my job? Should I get a divorce, right?
You just don't know the answer, and you'll never be able to find a definitive answer for that because you can't walk down that path to choose. And for some reason, this gets caught up with the notion of meaning, which this is what confuses me. Like, well, because we can't compare possible lives, that means that we can't find meaning in our life. Now, I find this to be strange.
Oh, yeah. So do I. I mean, he's not really, Kundera's not really clear about what he means by this. I mean, I tried to flesh this out a little bit, but just like, I mean, just giving a real surface reading, it seems on the face of it, you said like, well, yeah, something that happens only once, you really can't tell what that means. Sorry, no. A lot of things in my life have only happened once. Like, I don't know, we talked about this before. Like, I had a Sega CD when I was a kid, and it broke. And I knew that was bad. It only happened once, by the way. Didn't have money to buy another one. It broke. And I didn't need any help figuring out what that meant. And it did mean something to me. And it didn't eternally return either.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand. I'm taking it from the exact opposite position. I mean, just because something does repeat, why would that therefore make it meaningful? Yeah. I mean, things repeat all the time that aren't meaningful in any deep or even interesting way.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, to me, it just seems counterintuitive to say, well, just because it repeats, that means there's some kind of profoundness to it. It just doesn't even make sense to me. I don't know what that means. I mean, I get the point about, well, we just don't know what to do. And, maybe it's possible. It's very possible. In fact, it's probably infinitely possible that you screwed up in the sense that you would have rather had done this or something. Yeah. Then again, you don't know what kind of person you've been had you chosen the other things. So I don't know. But, in this sense, like, we just don't know what to do, and we make the right, who knows if we're making the right choices or not. We just simply can't know with complete certainty if we're making the right choices. That's fine. Why that would make your life not meaningful, I have no idea why.
Yeah. I mean, this is really getting into, he's obviously painting some kind of, like, some image of meaning here where it has to be something along the lines of, you know exactly what to do, right? You don't feel any of this kind of existential doubt weighing on you. Like, oh, should I do this or should I do that? Like, if something is meaningful, it's just kind of, instantly, like I don't know, like Michael Jordan on the court, right? You don't have to give it a moment's thought. You just boom, 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 boom. You did it. Success. Didn't even need to think for a moment.
Right. Basically, I guess the idea would be that, if all the moral choices were just simply written into the structure of the universe, we would never have to make a choice, basically. Yeah. Right? If we actually knew exactly what morality was, or what a meaningful life I don't know, this is such an odd idea, whatever, you know, like a meaningful life would be, and
Right.
there would only be one, apparently.
Yeah.
And we would just simply follow the set course, and that would, quote unquote, be a meaningful life, and there wouldn't even ever be a choice. It would simply just be following the rails up into,
Yeah.
quote unquote, a meaningful life. Now, nobody believes this, though.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the idea that we just don't have anymore.
Yeah. And like, let me bring this in here too. Like, I do want to, I want to bring in what I think he's feeling here on this, though. Like, this, I think, fits perfectly with people's feelings about animals, especially about like pets. I think when you think about like how people say they're jealous of their pets, and I think he's talking about this same feeling. My cat leads a kind of meaningful life in the way I don't, right? In the sense that, like, when I think about my life, it seems to not be based on anything, whereas my cat never gives it a moment's thought at all. It never needed to, right? I think, and children, pets and children too. People express jealousy towards children for this very point too, right? The fact that they don't have to give a moment's thought to what they should do. They just go, and they see that as kind of a more
Desirable
existence, or a more fulfilled existence, or a more natural kind of existence. I think some people think of this as.
I mean, to me, all that seems is just an easier existence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the world is completely solid. I mean, cats don't have to worry about anything like that. Children either. They just don't know to worry about it. They're simply incapable of it. This is a desirable position, I guess, but to me, that sounds like a lot of just bad faith.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I just picked a passage, and I hope you agree with me that this is where Kundera's after. I picked a passage out of Robert Solomon's book, The Passions, a book I like very much. And it just, like, this is about him describing somebody in the grips of like this kind of existential concept of the absurd, but just see how well it meshes with like what he's talking about. He just very short, he says, Solomon says, the ruby roach racing across my floor in aimless panic. Its life could not lack meaning. It seems so through my eyes only, as it anonymously scurries to the molding to protect its tiny scrap of garbage. Absurd. But it is my life that I am judging, contrasting my own scurrying and my own garbage with that of a roach. Underlying the contrast are the obvious comparisons, and they do not escape my awareness. My cat finds her life richly endowed with meanings. At the moment, she is too hot to be curious or to notice that I am watching her with a benign, hostile envy. She is draped across my desk like a melted candle, slightly hungry but content and confident that after 8 years, she will be fed upon command. She does not know it, but tonight she gets a medicinal bath. She will be upset in the extreme, her wetless world dampened and disoriented, but her life will not lack meaning. It will only be momentarily unpleasant, and she will not bear it graciously. Only I suffer from that cold, damp, sterilizing sense of pointlessness, which I cannot help but carry with a certain quiet dignity. I have done it to myself. Thinking has deprived me of the very meaning which it demanded. I think this is, I don't know, this is what Kundera has tuned into. I think he should have put it more like this, though. But this must be what he's trying to get at with the unbearable lightness of being.
I do think so. I mean, I do feel like there are just passages that just shout bad faith to me. Like he's describing bad faith. For example, when Teresa goes to the engineer, and, you know, after Thomas has been having these affairs, still having these affairs, and he smells a woman's groin in his hair.
Yeah.
And she goes to the engineer, and she doesn't know why she's doing it, but we kind of know why, right? A little bit. I mean, there's all these rationalizations and stuff, but maybe there's a slight bit of a revenge, or a desire to become more like Thomas, or to free herself from this jealousy that's killing her. But as she goes to the engineer, she decides that she goes up to his place, and then she just treats her body as if it's not her. Right? She stands there and lets him do everything, but she doesn't acquiesce to him, but she doesn't refuse him at first either. Right? She just stands there like a solid block. and observes her body. I mean, this just shouts like, you know, the same thing what Jean-Paul Sartre was exactly describing, like, you know, just kind of letting you, not taking part in your own decisions and just letting whatever happen. It felt like she was in a moment of just utter bad faith.
Oh yeah, that's a great one to pick out. There's another passage in 5.5, I think. It seems, I don't know, this passage and the one you quoted, like, seemed to push on this reading too. He said in 5.5, he writes about there's a character, an editor, that's kind of giving his opinion about communism and stuff. And he writes, he acted as though everything he did were to be repeated endlessly, to return eternally without the slightest doubt about his actions. He was convinced he was right. Isn't it interesting? He tries to throw together the eternally returning and being convinced you're right. Right? It's strange things to throw together. First of all, like why would the fact that you're just on the surface of it anyway? Why would the fact that like what you're doing is going to be eternally repeated? Why would that convince you you're right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the answer must be somehow that like he thinks that this editor is seeing this as like the structure of the universe. Like he can't do anything different. It's like following the laws of gravity. Of course, this is my opinion. Of course, and then he kind of throws this not thinking, this kind of non-critical thinking on this kind of like, hey, you know, whatever's. That's me. That's how I am. This is how it is, right? He throws that all on this idea of necessity. And we were talking about this before we started, but like people, there's a grain of truth to this too. People do get obsessed with these ideas, these kind of bad faith ideas, like, oh, that's just the natural course of things. That's why I did it. Of course, right? Of course, you know, I should be aggressive. Men are aggressive. What are you talking about? That's why I hit you. Because men are aggressive. Really? Does that excuse what you did? I don't know.
I mean, this is what we continue in the novel. This is what haunts Thomas in the first part of the novel, right? That he feels like, and I guess he's on the side of a little more on the side of lightness, I guess, in the beginning sometimes, even though he's got a kind of dual aspect to him. Is that he just happened to meet Teresa in the bar.
Yeah.
But there were so many coincidences that led up to him finding her. And when he starts to think about it, he's like, well, that didn't have to be that way at all, right? I mean, my life could have turned out any other infinite possible of different ways. This thought just pains him, right? Mm. It makes him upset, right? And this is his challenge, right? This is the challenge of the book. At least I believe. And my viewing of this book, and this might be where people are like, what? But my belief is that this book is, the challenge of this book is, how do we have a meaningful life in a universe that's random?
Yeah.
Or can be random. Is it possible? And I think eventually they find out that it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Let's just take Nietzsche out of this. Let's just throw him. Nietzsche.
He just confuses things. I mean, a lot of these ideas feel like they're lifted from Nietzsche anyway.
I know, right?
And if anything, Nietzsche is on the side of where he's arguing, as opposed to this is some rebuttal of the eternal return, which, by the way, Nietzsche didn't actually, you know, publish as like this is the way the universe is. It's ludicrous and it's just a psychological test. So I don't know. Let's just leave Nietzsche out and just tackle the kind of issues that do make sense to me here, right? I mean, because there's a lot of interesting issues above and beyond. This kind of weird confusion with meaning and repetition and what that would mean to say, which sounds, again, like a bunch of bad faith to me. So if we leave that all out and just say, like, what I find interesting about the book and what I really took away from the book was this, and this might sound crazy, but I was fascinated with the fact that everything in this book has a dual nature. Everything is pierced with something else. It's opposite in a certain respect, right? So Thomas himself is described as a Don Juan on the outside, but like a Tristan on the inside, right? He himself is this double nature to him. He he wants to be flirtatious and jump from woman to woman, but he's got this aspect of love. He's in love with Teresa, right? So he's torn by these double aspects inside of him. And
did you think, like, on that point, just real quick, I want to just discuss on that. Do you think, like, he was? I agree. I really like where you said, like, he's on the light side, but like it must be. He was entranced with it must be. So in a way, he also was carrying around this heaviness inside of him, this necessity, this destiny he wanted, and this is kind of trapping him or making him unhappy.
This is his Esmizine or whatever.
Esmizine,
I'm Mollist Kleinmal kind of thinking that, like, this is something he has to overcome in the end. But I mean, every one of these things are linked with something that they don't like or they find disturbing, right? So Teresa is linked to a man that she loves utterly, but treats her as just another, concentration camp body at times. The revolution, or the anti-revolutionary, what can I say? The protesters in Prague, right, against the Russians. Or the Russians themselves too, or what's the best? Here's the best example: when I went to Vietnam, France goes to Vietnam with the French delegates and the American delegates, and they're all fighting for this great cause, right? The Cambodia has been occupied by Vietnam, and now they have to get down there and save some lives. That's their grand march, right? But he goes out of his way to say, well, it's obvious that these people just have incredible egos, right? The French are annoyed that the Americans have taken over, right away. So we learn right away the French are just these vain people, because if they really just cared about saving lives, they wouldn't care if the press conference was in English or not, right? And we learn, of course, the Americans are showboaters. They're always up in the front, right? Again, it's all about their star power and their ego, and they're just feeling good about themselves. But yet it's mixed with this kind of grand mission, right? Again, aspects that don't mix. In other words, the lightness and the heaviness are just inherently linked together everywhere you look in the book. And this grows unbearable for some characters, right? This is what Stalin's son had to deal with, right? How could someone like Stalin's son be trapped, first of all, in some kind of German prison and be yelled at for, not cleaning up his shit?
Yeah. Right.
So he, the mighty great Stalin's son, has to deal with shitty problems, basically. Yeah. Again, he doesn't. This to him drives him nuts. How can the universe be in this way? Have this dual nature where something so high and mighty as he has to deal with this. This is the aspect that I think repeats over and over again in the book.
I agree. I like this idea of the highest and the lowest kind of running. If you put them in this like up and down, right? This high, he does at one point in the book too. Like this highest and lowest running together is definitely a theme in here.
Just think about too how they die. Franz dies inconsequentially. He just randomly gets robbed, and he dies.
And he was the heaviest character too, by the way. He was the guy who needed meaning the most, and he died this kind of meaningless death.
Just random way. And Teresa and Thomas just get hit by a truck. They get ground under a truck.
Crushed underweight,
right? Just again, very right. But that itself was meaningless, right? I mean, there was no story to be told there. This juxtaposition of seemingly meaningless or silly aspects or unbearable aspects in the world mixed together with what you'd consider weighty and powerful and meaningful. This is what's inside people, and this is what they can't quite take. I mean, what it really reminds me of, what this book really reminds me of is, it reminds me of Pulp Fiction.
Interesting.
Right? I mean, like, this is what Pulp Fiction loved to play with. These weighty, intense scenes where you're just like,
really...
like you can't even breathe when Jules is speaking sometimes. And then next moment they're talking about cheeseburgers. And you're just kind of left shocked. You're like, what? I mean, but this is the world. Like, I think Kundera wants to say, this is the world we live in. Or like No Country for Old Men, this is more of a darker portion of this, right? There's just no story there, right? I mean, like, eventually one of the characters just dies randomly. There's no story to be told there. and he just gets killed by random, what I think, Mexican drug dealers or something. It's revenge. But this juxtaposition, I think, is what the characters all have to learn to deal with somehow, right? How can we make a meaningful life when this is all going on, right? What can you do about it? This is
like
my
this.
feeling.
Oh wow, I'm totally with you on this. Can I throw in like a sidebar?
Okay.
Although I really like what you said, I want to throw in a sidebar about Thomas's and Teresa's death. I think of all the deaths, they got the happiest one, and because like earlier in the novel, he says he couldn't imagine them dying apart. He couldn't live with her dying first. And so he got his wish. They didn't die apart. They died at the same time. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading a little bit too much into this, but he said when he's earlier in the book, he's differentiating between like sex and love, and he said like sex is for pleasure, but love was the desire to sleep together. Isn't it kind of strange that, or kind of fortuitous that in the end they both sleep together, right? They died together. The eternal sleep, right?
He died. This is, I think, how he wins the game, though, right? Or at least this is the struggle he had to overcome. He became. I don't know if this is weird because, like, this is why I don't know. This is where I feel like I'm going to separate myself from other interpretations of this book, just simply because I kind of feel like some of these heavy aspects, I think he accepts them in the end. He has to learn how to make a meaningful life, and love is part of that. And he learns how to love.
Yeah.
Right. This is how he gets through it.
He does throw love in with lightness, though, at one point in the book.
Yes, I know.
Which mixes things up considerably. Because that would mean love is not part of meaning.
Which I don't
get. Like, that threw me for a big loop, too. But he does later say, he specifically, he goes right on and says, love is a kind of lightness.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get caught up in this. Like, because, for example, one aspect I really liked was this idea of these opposites mixed together, heaviness and lightness are mixed together in uncomfortable ways. But there's other ways that they're mixed together too. They're mixed together in ways in that meaningful things, meaningful events in their lives have ridiculous origins in all of their lives. Or in other words, seemingly random origins. So like the bowler hat, or for example, what's great is Sabina, the way she started painting, right? This is like one of the big things in her life is her paintings. But remember how it started? She dropped some red paint on her painting once. Whoops.
Yeah.
And that's it. That was the beginning of all of her paintings. All this thematic thing that runs through her entire life is just simply that. The number 6, right, just happens to be the time that Teresa got off of work. And it was also Thomas's room number. But the number 6 recurs through the entire book, right? When she's dreaming about going to get killed by those men on the top of a hill, there were 6 men there, right? The dog always wakes them up at 6. Right? There's these kind of repeating random moments in their lives, and things originate. For example, how Thomas was thrown out of the medical field entirely just happened to write an essay about Oedipus one day that was misunderstood, taken out of context, and then his life was basically ruined by the communists, or destroyed a little bit by the communists first, right? But all of these have, let's just say, not the world's, there's nothing necessary about any of the way that any of this started at all.
You got a problem with 6?
Yes.
What's wrong with 6? No. No. But I do think I really like I wonder if we're heading toward the same place. I wonder if I'm just going to jump the gun a little bit on you. Like, exactly what you said just now, I think it fits in with maybe where I took this book, which is like these fortuitous events are chained together in order to create meaning.
Oh, good. That's right. That's where I was going.
Well, oh boy, can I just come right out and say it? Oh my God.
Okay.
It's love. Love is what chains these. Well, it's beauty. Beauty raises us out of the necessary. are the mechanical, right? And it's kind of love and beauty that give us our freedom from destiny, if you will, from this overbearing weight that's upon us. No, he talks about this kind of poetic imagination, and this is kind of what sets these characters free. They take something and they take a metaphor that seems beautiful, and they link.
Yeah.
They link these fortuitous events together.
The ability to do this.
Yeah, right. Is what kind of leads them off of this course, if you will. It leads them higher, I guess. Because this type of freedom is not unbearable, right? This is the bearable lightness.
Yeah.
I guess.
So the ability to see your life as a meaningful piece of art, right? It's been constructed. Where have I heard that idea before? I don't know. I think you just drew that one completely out of the air.
Yeah, I mean, you could give it as I was gonna say I went straight for Nietzsche too on this. If it's just simply beauty, I think that could be a dangerous idea. But
we don't know that precisely, right? I mean, it just seems like the ability to. I mean, but people go wrong here too, right? For example, Teresa at times links the wrong things together. And now she's a paranoid maniac, right? She thinks that there are spies all around her waiting for her. Or Franz goes a little too far here, and he thinks that Sabina's watching him from above or something, right?
I mean, he kind of in a weird, but it's all this kind of beauty for him. It's kind of this wonderful picture he paints for himself to get through life, though.
Yeah, this is the way he gives it. And it seems like it doesn't matter, though, because like these people sometimes are taking these random things, but they're making the wrong interpretation, but it's helping them get through life. For example, Thomas's son too, right? I mean, his father just mentioned a random biblical kind of passage, and then he finds himself becoming a pastor later in life, right, or a minister. Right, and all of these kind of mix up and misunderstanding. And for example, later when Thomas dies, he has to have on his tombstone, right, something about
he wanted the kingdom of God on earth,
right? Again, another misunderstanding. It was just simply what his son had misinterpreted what he was saying in the beginning. Just misunderstanding after misunderstanding. But this is what helps these people live.
I mean, it's kind of painted even darker in the sense that it's painted as kitsch too. How he ended up, it's even painted almost worse than a misunderstanding. It's painted as like a degradation.
Right, and this is one thing we have to talk about finally is like, because all these things exist side by side in the world, or at least in your vision of the world, like this is where kitsch comes up, which is kitsch is, I mean, I think the best word for kitsch, I don't know, would be ideology, maybe, or something close to this, where, you know, you want the world to be a certain way, and whatever doesn't work out that way, it just gets out of your vision. It's just completely out of sight, out of mind. Or you just eliminate it.
Yeah, it's got pushed outside. It's made like alien, evil, outside force coming in.
It's like a unified vision of the world. So, for example, I don't know, like a kitschy kind of world would be here in Japan. It would be Sazai-san, right? Yeah. Or in America, Leave It to Beaver, or the 50s as a golden age entirely, right? Or you know, Soviet films that she talked about in the book. Sabina talked about in the book, and you know, this might be part of the reason why we need someone like a nostalgia critic, because we're so we have a tendency to kitschify the world and not see the dark and bad aspects of it. And then, you know, whatever doesn't fit in to the Leave It to Beaver world, or whatever the world is, you throw whatever doesn't belong there into, well, the toilet, or gulags, or prisons, or slums, or in Japan's case, Akihabara. Whatever it doesn't fit goes there, and these people are basically just outsiders now.
Yeah, I think you want to locate like the beginnings, but the beginnings of totalitarianism in just, you know, crappy artistic kitsch. But like when it gains power, when it becomes absolute, then it becomes this kind of totalitarian way of thinking. But like I guess he wants to say like the root of it is in this kitsch, this inability to have this other stuff around, this total non-acceptance of aspects of life, right? Where it's talk. This is about like the being, accepting being holy.
I mean, this is where it starts to get I don't know, extreme, but I mean, and maybe I'm extrapolating a little too far, but he basically says that every political organization is just a form of kitsch, basically. What's really lurking behind all politics is an evil kind of kitsch.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, this really works well into Nietzsche's human alter human themes running through there too, right? This whole, I don't know, wholesale souls that can't accept this kind of mixed nature of the world, which is why it's nice it came after our Nietzsche.
Yes. Yeah.
Again, Nietzsche winding up again on the right side here. I don't know what this is about.
How did that happen? I don't know.
I don't know. I want to secretly think that he just loves Nietzsche, and he actually knew this the entire time. He was just, you know, writing a book that was basically Nietzsche's ideas on paper in a nice story, and that somehow, I don't know, escaped everyone. I don't know. That's my story. That's my kitschy story.
It's the secret story.
That's
I like the
kitsch.
conspiracy. It fits pretty well though.
So much of it feels like just, you know, Nietzsche lifted onto paper, which is fine. Which is fine. So this is the kitsch. This is what kitsch is, and like, right, I just like this idea that if there's a bunch of competing powers in the world, right, then no one ever gets thrown into one little area or gulag or something, or eliminated from society, right? All these kind of alternative art is allowed to exist, but once one party gets control of everything, then you're in trouble. Then you got the gulag, which is a kind of, as a political statement. I mean, this is so very. How can I take this even broader here? This is very 1980s. Fear of the Soviet Union, danger in complete control. So I mean, yeah, we gravitated towards these kind of ideas of free speech. We had the Solzhenitsyn lecture a little bit before. I mean, this is one of the dangers that Solzhenitsyn warned about, I think. And it would fit very nicely into the kind of feeling of the world at the time. In other words, you know what? Stand off from your ideology, man. Ideology is destroying the world.
Yeah.
It's melting art down. It's destroying humanity. It's crushing the beautiful world, because ideology melts down and destroys whatever it can't understand. And every ideology has something it can't understand. This is very kind of, it feels like the 1980s, right? This is our dark vision of the world then. I wonder how that would play now. It feels like ideology is coming back now. And we want to say things like, well, and maybe if there was some kind of devil's advocate over here that said to Kundera, well, not having an ideology is an ideology too. You know, if for every Sabina in the world, you know, Sabina just plays right into the hands of who's ever in charge now in the capitalist system, right? They're more than happy to have a Sabina out there that doesn't care about politics, right? But that's to say she doesn't, right? She's always trying to challenge and things, but ideological movements can have merit, right? You can't be this kind of fractured individual actors on the scene is what I feel like kids these days would say, as opposed to when we were growing up, the danger was this kind of overpowering ideology of the Soviet Union. What do you think about that?
I agree. Like, and this is kind of, I sat down and I stared at the passage. I think I should have marked the number, but it's in the Misunderstood Words Dictionary, Living in Truth. And he kind of throws up this antinomy between Sabina, who is super light, and Franz, who is super heavy. And she says, Sabina thinks living in truth is only possible away from the public. It's only possible in private. So, like, I mean, in a world dominated by some kind of ideology, she would just be crushed. She'd be thrown out. And then you got Franz on the other side, who thinks the private is the source of lies. So a person is one thing in public and they're another in private, hence making them a hypocrite and a liar. So you get this kind of interesting antinomy set up. It just feels to me in the book, Sabina is given a much more sympathetic look. It seems like these private spaces where are the locus of the truth, right?
Let me give you a quote from Kundera himself.
Oh, okay.
Without secrecy, nothing is possible. Not love, not friendship. That's Kundera.
Okay. I get that. Like, I have to say though, I sat there, I stared at that passage for a while because I was like, I can really feel the pull of both of those ways of thinking. It just seems to me like
There's this authenticity feel about Franz's, right?
yeah, or yeah, exactly right. Like, or it almost seems like so. Like if you have your Sabina, who's only truthful in private, I don't know, what does that say about her? Like, let's say she's walking down the street and she sees some guys harassing another guy, and she's like, well, I don't want to look like the asshole who's telling people what to do, and she just like lets it go. Right. I mean, what can you escape that? Can you escape that by throwing that off? Well, but in private, but she goes home and she's just furious about it.
Right. I mean, this is what we're facing right now. This is the crisis we're facing now. I think that these two ideologies, the Soviet era, anti-Soviet kind of private spaces are the home of freedom versus authenticity and safe quote unquote safe spaces. Right. The left's new ideology of like, well, you got to have a world where everyone can be themselves, but that's impossible, right? I mean, this is just another ideology, right? You're not allowed to just be yourself. You have to be a good person, right? You can't be the harasser on the street. In fact, they don't want you to be a harasser at all. Not even, I mean, like, this is what I think if Kundera were here, he'd say that the danger of the new left and this new rise of, I don't know what you can call it, whatever the new left is here, is that they are a little too willing to eliminate the private spaces. And you know what, this is, I think that, it's a parody of the left. I mean, I can certainly see people saying like, look, this is what they're doing on the internet already, right? The internet is a private space, or at least what people have considered a private space. And they want to get rid of the private spaces and make everybody
literate. I think this is a focus of contention among people, whether the internet is a private space or a public space.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
And there's a lot of misunderstanding of words being exchanged, like almost like the book, misunderstood words going past each other about this very point, whether the internet could be declared public or private.
It feels like Kundera's on that side, though.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I saw like him saying basically the truth lies in these private spaces. That's where like the truth.
I mean, for him, I mean, like, the characters do have political stances here, but I think ultimately this book is apolitical in a sense that, like, it sees that ideology is behind every politics, and that is there's something of death there. Something that will kill part of the world lurks behind every ideology, and this is something that is dangerous. And, I feel the pull of this too, right? I mean, sort of imagine our new authenticity world today. I mean, like, like kind of what Plato said, like, if everybody has freedom, it'll just end up in tyranny. Well, if everybody is authentic, that can't work, right? It doesn't work for everyone to be authentic, because we'd have, like, I don't know, racist idiots just spouting garbage all the time. So whatever the political
we would lose freedoms in some other area.
In areas, right?
So like, people with less power would be suppressed by these kind of these more bully types, right?
Whatever that ideology may be, right? Whether I'm just looking from the outside right now, whatever that way may be, it would have to create the world in a certain way, right? In other words, like, there wouldn't be any private spaces left, because you want these people to conform privately and publicly to this way of being, right? Authentically being. Doesn't it feel like, I don't know, maybe this is a weird thing to say. Why not? Doesn't it feel like people don't want, they want their people to be through and through true, right? Like, for example, the Hulk Hogan thing. I found this disgusting, by the way. What is it, Gawker did this?
Oh, the sex tape racist rant thing?
So Hulk Hogan goes on a racist rant on a sex tape that his best friend took without his knowledge, and then Gawker got a hold of and was published. Okay, this whole thing is just disgusting. And to me, the number one person that disgusts me is the place that exists is Gawker itself. I mean, doesn't this exactly remind you of what the Soviets were doing then in Prague?
Or even in the book.
Yeah, right. In the book, right? I mean, like, they would take the secret tapes of these people that you thought were good when they were alone with their friends, and then they'd broadcast them live on air to make you kind of chuckle and hate them.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happened to Hulk Hogan. But, I mean, when you see a lot of responses, the responses are kind of like, Hulk Hogan, what a jerk. And yeah, you can't help the force of that, because you're disappointed majorly in Hulk Hogan. right? You really are. But for me, the true villain of the story is Gawker, because they've done something that is very dangerous, right? They've illegally taken somebody's private property and just thrown it out into the open world. So I don't know, it just kind of feels like if Kundera were here, he'd be like, well, see, they don't want private spaces. They want authenticity through and through. I mean, just as a talking point, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I really get it. This is something I was kind of thinking about when I was looking at this passage too. It reminds me, I don't know why, but I'm really attracted by, like, you know, what did Captain Picard say about the holodeck? Was it Captain Picard? He said it about the holodeck. He said, you know, like, or was it Riker? He said about the holodeck. Like, in the holodeck, do anything you want, but out here, you have to be a Starfleet officer. Right? Isn't it interesting? I mean, maybe feel like you downloaded his holodeck records. You're like, wow, look at crazy sex stuff Hulk Hogan was doing in the holodeck.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like it doesn't speak to his character, which like leads to people being disappointed. But
yeah, I mean, how could you not resist that? Of course it does, right? I mean, you just can't help.
Yeah.
The Soviets were counting on that. The Soviets were counting.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that the Gawker it's just terrible.
They are the villain.
Yeah, definitely.
Unquestionably, they are disgusting villains of this story. Much more so than Hulk Hogan is.
Oh yeah. Most definitely. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just
I was disgusted, but I just couldn't believe it.
It's terrible. Yeah, it really is terrible.
Completely immoral.
I would agree. I don't get how they. I haven't read any of their posts rationalizing it either.
Whatever it is, I don't know. I can't imagine the justification. I mean, it was taken illegally. Whatever it is, like, there it is. It's just there, thrown out into the open because I don't know why. Because Gawker wants money. I don't know. Whatever lame justification. Like, well, we nipped another racist in the bud. Well, all right, but did you have to do it like this? Did you have to be this disgusting?
I don't know.
So, I mean, it just reminded me of this conflict again, the private spaces and
Plato.
And Plato was a guy that was against private spaces. He hated private spaces.
Yeah.
He hated private spaces.
Democracy was the place with the private space.
Democracy had private spaces for Plato, and Plato, what he wanted ultimately was no one to have, or his leaders to have no private space.
The Gold Soul had none, right?
So this is this conflict over privacy, which is really interesting. I like this kind of theme in the book a lot. And he comes down squarely on the side of we need private spaces to retain freedom from ideology, basically, is what I took it to be.
Yeah. Let me get into this a little bit more, and I really like where you went on that. Let me take it to a different place, same area, different place, a little bit different focus. I mean, so Thomas, he's a guy who really enjoys private spaces, if you know what I mean. But okay, let's get back to Kitsch a little bit too. So Kitsch is this blocking off of some unacceptable area of existence or the elimination of it. You don't accept being holy, right? But it seems like, and he kind of taunts, like Kundera kind of taunts you when he's talking about it. He says, either shit is acceptable, in which case don't lock yourself in the bathroom, or we are created in an unacceptable manner. He kind of taunts you, the reader, saying like, oh yeah, you think you're this kind of holier than thou guy who can accept all creation? Well, why don't you leave the door open next time you're in the bathroom? You can't do that, can you? And I think Thomas, he also doesn't find, on the scale, he also doesn't find part of existence acceptable, right? He's not this guy walking around with the door open when he goes in the bathroom. I think, but he's not a totalitarian either. He's not a kitsch lover either. He hates kitsch. He would be what Sabina described him as, a monster in the land of kitsch. He would be the monster, and Sabina absolutely hates kitsch too. But it seems like on the other hand, like I don't know. So what does Thomas do here? Like he doesn't find part of being acceptable, but he doesn't eliminate it either. He's somehow able to make the disgusting acceptable again. And I don't know. I think it's partially through this. Kundera wanted to put in this unity of like the creation of the disgusting also created the exciting, especially the sexually exciting. So I think Thomas would be the #1 guy saying like, keep the disgusting, keep that around. I need it. I love it. That's the fun stuff, right? But where is he left to go? He doesn't find it because he doesn't find it acceptable. It's exciting. You know what I mean? Like because people are guarding off these areas, because these are extremely private areas, they're areas for him to conquer, which gives him excitement. What is Thomas doing here then? What is he? I don't know. This is something I couldn't quite entirely wrap my head around. He was able to beautify the disgusting? Was that his?
Did he beautify the disgusting?
Well, beautified in the sense that like he enjoyed it, right? He found meaning in it. Like I really think like so like Kundera tells this myth about the man's fall from paradise when man was still basically an animal, right? And when God kicked man out, that's when the disgusting was born, and that's when the exciting was born. But that's also when like we went from circle to line, right? So this unacceptable element was created in this jump. But this is also when individuality was created. And this is when the private spaces were created too. So if we went back to this, we would just be these bodies, right? This thing that Teresa hates so much. We wouldn't have these extremely, extremely personal spaces that give us our unique individuality either. I think Thomas loves that stuff. He extremely loves that stuff. I think so. That's why I was trying to figure out. Well, what is Thomas doing here then? What is he to do about this? He doesn't want to eliminate the disgusting, so he just kind of likes it. He just lets it hang around because it's pleasurable, or why not? Why wouldn't Thomas eliminate the disgusting? Is it because it would be at the same time the elimination of individuality and the elimination of beauty and the elimination of all this other stuff? Is that the message here?
I don't know. I'm gonna run with my reading is that they learn to live with juxtaposition in the universe, right? They learn to live with the fact that these things are mixed together and to find significance even if they are, right? Somehow, I don't know, putting up with the fact that they live in a world of Stalin and shit and not throwing themselves against the fence for it, not committing suicide because of it.
Is this like the reason I kind of took this beautifying the disgusting? It's kind of a weird way to put it, but like it seems like these fortuitous moments, these moments of beauty, the ones that lead us outside, yeah, the ones Kundera places like significance in these events, even though he said meaning was in them. Well, anyway, don't think about that. He says these, or at least Thomas puts a lot of significance in these really unique events, and this is where beauty happens too. Beauty is the one that's lifting you out of this mechanical structure of the world. So it seems like beauty has somehow redeemed these private spaces, these fortuitous events.
I mean, I think this is the reason why, for example, immediately Sabina and Teresa kick it off, right? And you're kind of like, yeah, they're weird because they're opposite, right? Teresa is heavy, Sabina's light. Why are they kicking it off? But immediately in the beginning of that chapter, we learned that Sabina has a very intriguing way of interpreting how she met with Thomas, which was she saw that this uniqueness is something great, is unbelievable, is a miracle. She took the uniqueness as a sign of the artsy nature of her life, right? She found significance in all the randomness that it could ever possibly lead that to ever happen. Right? So in other words, she was able to make some kind of artistic line there. And immediately when she meets Sabina for the first time, she finds that Sabina has done the exact same thing with art. You know, she dropped a red piece of paint on her paintings, and she was able to make an entire life, a body's work of art by simply through an accident, a very nice accident that she's expanded on in this way. And that's why she sits there and listens to Sabina go on and on about her art, you know, like no one else ever has, right? As it said in the book. This is where I think she found, I don't know, something similar to herself in there.
Right? Yeah. She's definitely she's attracted to. Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, what I can't figure out is like, I mean, this, when you say significance, that's just another clever way of saying meaning.
Yeah.
So, I mean, eventually, I guess what we have to deal with is that you need both, and you have to live in a world with both. There's going to have to be a certain level of weight in your world, because without it, you'd fly off into nothing. But with too much of it, you become a kitschy monster.
Yeah.
And you have to find a balance between the lightness and the heaviness of being, and find a way to live in a world and not go crazy.
I mean, that's why I do think like Sabina and Franz ended in the worst ways, whereas Thomas and Teresa ended a little bit happier. They were able to find, at least the night before they died, they kind of had this love, finally they have this more perfect love, even though it's not the best love, I guess, which is with animals, but they did have the happier ending.
I mean, I don't know, it just kind of feels like, it's going to sound very silly to me. I don't know why, but if I felt like that, it just have to have, if I was being honest with myself, it had to be both. Eventually, they just have to find a way to live in the world with both.
That's the reason why I didn't get like Thomas's like solution. He's like, if only I could be sexually turned on by a swan. I was sitting there thinking, why didn't you just think, if only I were sexually turned on by Teresa? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't that occur to him? What, did I miss something? Am I stupid? Am I being stupid here? Because that seemed like the obvious solution to me. Why was it a swan? Because it has this kind of metaphorical significance. Is it like one of these moments of beauty again?
I think he is sexually turned on by Teresa, though. So
yeah. So in other words, like, if only I wasn't just sexually in love with people. Was that the dream then? Was that it?
I'm not. I don't know how to comment on that actually, but
I don't know. I just didn't get what solution he was trying to come at, because it seemed like, you're right, he talked about in the book like how the lightness and heaviness are kind of linked in certain ways, especially when it comes to sex, which a large part of this book is about. And like the gears were kind of turning on each other, right? There's this excitement gear, and it affects this love gear a little bit. They're not totally separate. He's like, yeah, but if only I could just love a swan. But I guess it was he was in a dreamy state, so maybe he was just being metaphorical, I guess.
I mean, there has to be some kind of middle, because, like, I don't know, if you loved everything about a person, right, then I guess in his world it would cease to excite you, because you'd accept everything about them. Right? Yeah. There would be nothing left to conquer, because for him, love is a kind of conquering, right?
Yeah.
So, right. I mean, the love for a child is probably something like that, right? It's where you know and accept,
or an animal,
we love and accept everything about them. Whereas the love that adults share is kind of there's a hole inside of it. There's a space you can't see into, and that's good, according to him. And that space is what makes them unique and interesting and exciting. But again, if you go the exact opposite way, and then they're all just, they're just a bunch of who knows what's, and you're all completely light, and you're just shifting from girl to girl, I mean, eventually that's just going to be nothing either. So I mean, it has to have this balance, right? I guess that was what I took away from it. It can't all be lightness, right? Because that's just something we inherently search for, heaviness, I guess.
Yeah.
For significance interactions. And I don't know, just in a bigger picture, I just think I don't think we could act without heaviness, right? What would be the meaning of action without significance? I don't even know if you could do that. It'd be very difficult to maintain, at the very least.
Yeah.
Like that, like his 2-year vacation or whatever he took, and he got sick of that too, right? I mean, it's difficult to maintain action without some kind of weight.
Yeah. It's weird because like, yeah, this gets into the part of the book. It just gets strange. Maybe if I had more time, but like he eventually leaves Es muss sein behind. He says like that's for chumps, man, right? Like because love or beauty has lifted him out of his need for that. Because when she's like, well, sorry for dragging into this crappy little neck of the woods here, he's like, yeah, screw that. Who needs my my destiny or whatever, right? I'm fine. It seems like he's kind of moved to a different level.
That he moved on because when he realized that his perfect mate, whatever he was, the platonic mate, whoever was split from
the huge woman in the pool,
even if he met her, it wouldn't matter. He would still choose Teresa.
Teresa, yeah. But I mean, then
it went from destiny to choice.
Yeah, which then locates where's the heaviness. Like, what happened to repetition? Like, it's difficult there. I mean, like, what it seems to have relocated onto love or beauty then, right? Or this kind of metaphorical restructuring of your life, right?
I think that's where it is.
It doesn't seem to be in whatever this weight, repetition, heaviness, meaning. It seems to have left that triad. Or triad.
I never understood that anyway. So.
Yeah.
I just don't understand. I mean, like, yeah, you can say animals are happy, but then again, they don't have the capacity to know any better. And also, why something repetitive would necessarily be good, I don't know. I mean, in the sense of like, when you're really, really happy, you want the same thing to repeat over and over again. Yeah, that happens. Right? Nietzsche even says something like that. But
yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, for a dog, every day is new. Every day is exciting. He never gets sick of it. There's nothing to get sick of, right? It's just not that kind of being. That's fine. I guess, I don't know if you want to call that happy in a very superficial way. It's happy.
Yeah. I mean, it's happy because they don't know any better.
Yeah. I mean, it's this very superficial happiness, right? I mean, you could do the thing that you just lobotomize somebody and try to be happy every day.
Yeah.
That's, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where this kind of meaning gets thrown into repetition. But I'm sure he means something else, which is basically, I get it, but I think it just confuses the issue, honestly. So I don't know how to touch that.
Neither do I. I think generally we're in the right area anyway.
Yeah.
So, isn't it strange that it turned out kind of like Groundhog Day? Did you think about that? Did you think about that? Like Bill Murray, he was in the town and he started sleeping with all the women, but then in the end, he got, by getting the woman he loves, he was able to break out of the repetition. Yeah. It's Groundhog Day, man.
But the repetition didn't make it good. Right? Like, hey man, every day's repeating. He'd probably shoot himself, and then the day would just repeat again.
Yeah, he did actually try to kill himself a bunch of times.
I mean, just think about that. Or when you play video games, if you're just running a rail on a video game, would you be like, wow, that was a really significant choice I made? No, you would never say that, right? Like, oh, but you had to keep on repeating it. Like, I mean, that's the exact thing people want to escape from all the time. They want their choices to matter. So I don't know. I mean, like, just imagine a world for, Nietzsche has the exact opposite problem. For him, determinism is true.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to say my choices mean something in a world where everything is determined? This is another problem, right? A similar problem, actually. A very similar problem. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to bring Nietzsche back into this, but he started being mentioned here. So for Nietzsche, the problem is similar, or if not more difficult. Which is, for Nietzsche, you are running on a rail.
Yeah.
And yet you have to find meaning in this somehow. Just because for Nietzsche saw the world and he sees it all running a rail. He doesn't be like, okay, it's all Es muss sein. It's all significant. That would be, Nietzsche knows that's ridiculous then. I mean, it's a frightening idea that the world is running on a rail and everything's determined and you never make any choices. And everything you think or ever do will just be calculated out from some time period, right? Quantum mechanics notwithstanding. What do you do with a universe like that? So similar problem, I think, eventually. When it gets right down to it, a similar problem is happening. So, anyway, just a thought I had while reading it. I was, you know, just taking it from the opposite direction. Right? What if the universe weren't like repeating all the time? What if it were just simply running on a rail? Well, that doesn't mean anything either. At least to me, it doesn't.
Yeah. But it's once.
Yes. Once is never, I guess. So, I guess I don't know. I don't know. I want to believe my interpretation that the heaviness and weight are just something that we have to learn to live with, and we have to have a little bit of both and have a good management between them.
Yeah.
And that's where I ended up in the book. And if this is not what Kundera is trying to tell me, I'm sorry to Kundera. This is what I found in the book and what I enjoyed. So, what do you think? Any final statements?
Yeah. That's kind of what I took out of it. I think he was trying to transform. He's trying to transform this lightness into something that was bearable with, I don't know, some kind of meaning, which would equate to some kind of weight, I guess. But yeah. I really enjoyed the book. I definitely happy to have it on my bookshelf. I'm definitely taking it down, looking at it from time to time. I enjoyed the little misunderstood words section in the middle. I enjoyed that a lot.
I find a lot of the themes very true to life.
Oh yeah. It reminded me of Marty McFly. He's always like, it's heavy, Doc. What's wrong with the gravitation in 1985, Marty?
Everything is heavy.
It's heavy. Again, 80s. It's the 80s.
All right, in 2015, it's not so heavy.
Yeah.
I don't know what we use anymore, actually. So.
Flying cars.
What our metaphors are anymore. There's a lot of stuff we could have talked about, but I think we can leave it there. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. No, I think I'm pretty good. Yeah, I mean, anything I have to say would just kind of eventually run its way back to what we've already talked about. So I'm pretty good. Yep.
All right. This is our first kind of literary book talk. And we kind of meandered a little bit there, but I quite enjoyed doing this kind of, and it fit in a good place. I think a lot of themes running from Nietzsche ran into here, and even though some of the things Solzhenitsyn had to say kind of fit in here, this is the time period we're talking about, the Soviet Union. Maybe some of you don't remember the Soviet Union or weren't born when it was around, but interesting stuff. So I guess we'll see you next time for something else.
See ya.